Jake sat on the edge of his workbench, wiping his greasy hands on his overalls. He was used to long days in the small colony workshop, fixing broken engines, tractors, and anything else people needed fixed. It was a quiet life, not exciting, but peaceful. That was how he liked it. The world was quiet, and so was he. It was late afternoon when he heard the strange sound. At first, it was just a distant rumble like thunder. But then the ground shook beneath him, rattling the windows of the workshop. Jake stood up quickly, his heart racing. The noise grew louder, and he knew it wasn't thunder. His mind raced with possibilities. Could it be a meteor shower? Maybe a crash? But there were no reports of anything dangerous coming their way. He grabbed his jacket and stepped outside. The air was cool, and the sky was clear. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the fields around the colony. Jake's eyes scanned the horizon, trying to see anything unusual. Then, in the distance, he saw a bright streak across the sky, followed by a loud explosion. The ground shook again, and dust rose into the air. It was a crash. It's a big one. Without thinking, Jake ran toward the crash site. His heart beat faster as he sprinted through the tall grass, the sun dipping lower with each step. He didn't know what he was running toward, but something inside told him it was important. The crash site wasn't far, maybe a mile or so from the workshop. When Jake reached it, he stopped in his tracks. The wreckage of a ship lay scattered across the field. It wasn't anything like the ships they used on the colony. This was something completely different, sleek, metallic, and unlike anything Jake had ever seen. The ship was broken into pieces, parts of it twisted and charred. From the impact, Jake slowly approached the wreckage, his mind racing with questions. Was this from another planet? Had it come from space? What was it doing here on Earth? As he carefully moved closer, he heard a faint sound. It was a soft, pained cry coming from the wreckage. Without thinking, Jake moved toward the sound, his legs heavy with the weight of the moment. As he stepped around the broken pieces of the ship, he saw her. She was lying near the ship, her body partially covered in dirt and debris. Her skin was pale, almost glowing in the dim light of the setting sun. She had long, dark hair tangled around her face. Her breathing was shallow, but she was alive. Jake knelt beside her, unsure of what to do. His first instinct was to help her. But this was unlike any situation he had ever been in. The girl's features were alien, yet strangely beautiful. Her eyes were closed, but Jake could tell they were an unusual shade of deep violet. He carefully lifted her head, checking for injuries. Her skin felt soft, almost like it wasn't from this world. "Hey, can you hear me?" Jake's voice was shaky, but he had to make sure she was okay. He gently shook her shoulder, hoping for some kind of response. Her eyes fluttered open. For a moment, she just stared at him, confusion in her gaze. Lips parted, and she whispered, "Help. Me." Jake's heart skipped a beat. This wasn't a dream. He was really holding an alien in his arms. He'd heard stories everyone had. But to see one for himself, to hold one, was something Jake never imagined would happen to him. "What happened to you?" Jake asked, his voice steadying as he tried to stay calm. He couldn't let fear take over. Not now. The alien girl blinked, her eyes still wide with confusion. "Crash. Ship damaged." Her words were slow, as if speaking was painful. Jake looked around, seeing that the ship was in worse shape than he had initially thought. It was more than just a simple crash. Whatever this was, it had been through something catastrophic. "Can help," Jake said, determined. "I can fix things. You're not alone." Her eyes softened, and she gave a weak nod. She seemed to trust him, and that was all he needed. Jake quickly gathered the strength to lift her, carrying her away from the wreckage and toward the workshop. It wasn't far, but it felt like miles. Every step, every moment, Jake felt the weight of what he was doing. It wasn't just helping someone in need. He was helping an alien. This was no ordinary day. As Jake entered the workshop, he gently laid her on a table, moving aside tools and parts he hadn't touched in weeks. His mind was racing. What kind of technology was she from? What did she want with Earth? And how had she ended up here? The alien girl looked up at him again, her violet eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," she said softly. Jake nodded, swallowing hard. He wasn't sure what he was getting into, but he had already committed. He had to fix her ship. Her, and maybe for him too. "Don't worry," Jake said, focusing on her ship's damaged parts. "I'll do what I can." She watched him, her eyes thoughtful. "You fix all things?" Jake shrugged, trying to act confident even though he felt far from it. "Yeah, I'm good with machines. Ships, engines, pretty much anything." She smiled faintly, but there was a sadness behind it. "You have much to learn." Jake looked up at her, puzzled. "Learn? What do you mean?" The alien girl sat up slowly, her voice low but clear. "You will help. But it is not just fixing a ship. There is more." Jake didn't understand, but he could feel it, the weight of her words. Something bigger was happening here. Something important. "Just let me fix your ship first," Jake said, though he knew that wouldn't be the end of it. Whatever she needed, he was in this now. As he set to work on the ship, he couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was only the beginning of something much bigger. The galaxy was vast, and Jake was about to be caught up in something far beyond the quiet life he had known. Jake was still in shock. He sat next to the alien girl, who now lay on his workbench, resting. Her name was Lyra, and though she was still weak, she seemed to be improving. Jake had already taken care of some of her injuries, cleaning the cuts on her arms and bandaging them. She had told him her ship had been damaged during a long journey from her home, but she didn't explain much more than that. There was something in her eyes, a kind of sadness, as if she knew the crash was more than just an accident. Jake glanced at the ship's wreckage. It was unlike anything he had ever seen before. The technology seemed both advanced and strangely organic, like it had been grown rather than built. He ran his fingers along the metal surface, trying to understand how it worked. There were symbols all over it, glowing faintly in the dim light of the workshop. He had never seen anything like it in his life. "Are you feeling better?" Jake asked, turning to Lyra. She nodded slowly, her violet eyes watching him with curiosity. "I am. Better, thank you." Jake gave a small smile. "No problem. I think I can get your ship working again, but it's going to take some time. I'm not sure what I'm dealing with here." Lyra's gaze softened. "You have more skill than you know. You will learn quickly." Jake's heart skipped a beat. "I've always been good with machines, but learning alien technology? That seemed impossible. I'm not sure about that. Can fix engines and stuff. But this," he gestured to the wreckage, "this is something else." Lyra sat up slowly, her long dark hair falling over her shoulder. "Your mind is capable of much more than you realize. This ship is not like others you've seen. It can adapt to your skills." Jake stared at her, trying to make sense of her. "Words, what do you mean? You're saying this ship can change based on what I can do?" Lyra's eyes glimmered with a kind of knowing. "Yes, it is alive in a way. It has the ability to grow, to evolve. It listens to its pilot." Jake felt a shiver run down his spine. A living ship. That sounded like something out of a sci-fi movie. But here he was, standing next to the wreckage of a ship that looked like it could belong to another world. Lyra's presence only made the situation feel even more surreal. "I don't know if I can do it," Jake admitted, feeling a sense of doubt creeping in. "I mean, I fixed things before, but this, ... this is beyond me." Lyra's smile was faint but reassuring. "You already understand more than you know. Trust in yourself, and the ship will show you what you need to do." Jake didn't know why, but there was something about Lyra's calm confidence that made him believe her. Maybe it was the way she spoke, like she had seen things that were beyond human comprehension? Or maybe it was the way she looked at him, with an expression that made him feel like he was part of something larger than just a simple repair job. With a deep breath, Jake turned back to the ship. He needed to focus. The more he studied it, the more he saw how the pieces fit together. He started with what he knew, a broken engine and some damaged circuitry. But as he worked, he began to realize that the ship wasn't just about fixing wires and metal. It was about understanding how it worked as a whole, like a puzzle that needed to be solved. As he worked, Lyra quietly observed him. She didn't offer much advice, but Jake could feel her eyes on him, like she was waiting for him to discover something. It was almost like she knew the answers but wanted him to find them on his own. After a few hours, Jake wiped the sweat from his brow and sat back, looking at his progress. The ship was still in pieces, but he had managed to make some headway. It wasn't much, but it was something. Lyra seemed to sense his growing frustration. She walked over to him, her movements graceful. "You are doing well. This is only the beginning." Jake looked up at her, tired but determined. "I'm not so sure. The ship is nothing like what I've ever worked on. I don't even know where to begin with half of this stuff." Lyra knelt beside him, her eyes soft and understanding. "You began when you decided to help me. That is more than many would do." Jake felt a pang of guilt. He had helped her because it was the right thing to do, not because he thought he could fix an alien ship. But Lyra was right. He had made the decision to help, and now he couldn't turn back. He had to see this through. "All right," Jake said, standing up and stretching his sore muscles. "I'll keep going. I can't leave you stranded here." Lyra's smile was small, but it was full of gratitude. "Thank you, Jake. You have no idea what this means to me." As they continued to work together, Jake felt a strange sense of connection with her. She wasn't just an alien anymore. She was someone who needed his help. And in return, she had offered him the chance to be part of something much bigger than himself. Hours passed, and the workshop was filled with the sound of tools clanging and the soft hum of machinery. The more Jake worked, the more the ship seemed to come alive. He wasn't just fixing it, he was understanding it. The ship responded to his touch, almost like it was trying to communicate with him. Each piece he fixed seemed to make the ship hum a little louder, as if it were thanking him. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Jake stepped back and looked at the ship. It was no longer just a rekit. It was a working, functioning craft again. It wasn't perfect, but it was ready to fly. Lyra stood beside him, her eyes wide with awe. "You did it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Jake looked at her, his heart pounding in his chest. "I guess I did." She placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch light but warm. "You have more power than you realize, Jake. You have just unlocked something incredible." Jake didn't fully understand what she meant, but in that moment, he realized that this was just the beginning. The ship, the alien girl, the galaxy, he was part of something that was far beyond anything he could have imagined. "Are you ready?" Lyra asked, her voice full of anticipation. Jake took a deep breath, looking at the ship one last time. He didn't know where this journey would take him, but he knew he was ready. Ready! The sun had already set by the time Jake and Lyra finished their work on the ship. The glow of the ship's engines had slowly started to come back to life, casting a soft light around the small workshop.
Oh.
Jake stood at the edge of the ship, his hands resting on the metal frame, looking at the final piece he had fixed. It wasn't perfect, but it was functional. Lyra stood beside him, her gaze focused on the ship, a faint smile on her face. Jake could tell that she was impressed. Had been watching him work for hours, but she hadn't said much. She seemed to have a quiet confidence in him, as if she knew something he didn't. "You did more than just fix it," Lyra said softly, her voice gentle yet firm. "You made it better. The ship feels stronger now." Jake looked at her, surprised by her words. "I just followed the instructions. It wasn't anything special." Lyra shook her head, her violet eyes locking onto his. "You don't understand. The ship is more than just metal and wires. Like it's alive in a way.
Yes.
You didn't just repair it to connect it with it. It listens to you, Jake."
Thanks.
Jake's mind raced. He had heard Lyra talk about the ship being alive before, but now he was starting to think there might be some truth to it. The ship had seemed to respond to his touch, and he couldn't explain it. It felt different, like the ship was somehow aware of him, just as Lyra seemed to be. "I don't know about that," Jake said, his voice uncertain. "It just felt like fixing anything else. I'm not sure what you mean." Smiles softened as she stepped closer to him. "That's the thing, Jake. You're not just any mechanic. You're something more. That's why I asked for your help." Jake furrowed his brow, trying to understand her words.
What do you mean?
"I'm just a guy from a small colony.
And
I don't even know how I got mixed up in all this." Lyra looked at him with a kind of deep knowing. Your skills are not what make you special. It's your heart, Jake. You are connected to something much larger than this world. Jake's stomach twisted with confusion. I don't get it. Why me? Did you choose me? Lyra's gaze softened, and she placed a hand on his arm. I didn't choose you. The universe did. You have the potential to do great things, but you have to see it for yourself. You are meant to be a part of something that is bigger than anything you can imagine. Jake shook his head, his mind racing. This was all too much. He had helped an alien, fixed her ship, and now she was talking about the universe and destiny. It didn't make any sense. I'm just a mechanic, Jake repeated, his voice a little quieter now. I'm not cut out for anything more than this? Lyra smiled softly. That's where you're wrong. What you did today wasn't just fixing a ship. You've unlocked something inside you. The same thing that allows you to connect with the ship will allow you to do so much more. You just have to believe in yourself. Jake looked at her, feeling a mixture of doubt and curiosity. He had always been good with his hands. But now it felt like he was being asked to step into a new world, one that was completely foreign to him. What was she talking about? What did she mean by unlocking something inside him? Lyra stepped back and turned toward the ship. This ship, this technology, it's not just for travel. It's a weapon, a powerful one. It's yours. To command if you choose to accept it. Jake's eyes widened. He didn't know anything about fighting wars or leading armies. The most he had ever done was fix a few broken engines and help out on the colony. Now Lyra was saying he had the ability to control something that could change the fate of the galaxy. I don't know if I can do that, Jake said, his voice shaking with uncertainty. I'm not some kind of hero, Lyra turned back to him, her eyes steady and calm. Neither was I. But the ship has chosen you, Jake. You are more than you realize. Jake felt a surge of fear in his chest. The thought of being part of something so dangerous, something that could change the course of history, made his head spin. He had never asked for any of this. He had just wanted to fix a ship and go back to his quiet life. But now, everything had changed. You said the ship listens to me, Jake said, trying to make sense of what she was saying. But what if I mess up? What if I can't control it? Lyra stepped closer, her voice calm but firm. You can. The ship has chosen you because it believes in you. And I believe in you too. You don't have to do this alone. I'll be here to guide you. Jake looked at her, his mind filled with doubt. He didn't know if he was ready for this. He had always lived a simple life, never asking for more. Now, here was Lyra, offering him a chance to be part of something much larger. Could he really accept it? What's the choice? Jake asked, his voice low. What do you need from me? Her eyes shining with something like hope. I need you to help me fight. The galaxy is at war, and humanity is on the brink of being dragged into it. You have the power to change the outcome, Jake, but you have to choose. Jake stood there, silent for a long moment. His heart raced in his chest. What if he said no? What would happen to Lyra? What would happen to Earth? But what if he said yes? He had never imagined anything like this in his wildest dreams. Finally, Jake looked up at Lyra, his mind made up. He didn't have all the answers, but one thing was clear. He couldn't just walk away. Not now. I'll do it, Jake, said, his voice steady. I'll help you, but you have to promise me something. Lyra's eyes softened, and she nodded. Anything. You have to promise that I won't be alone in this, Jake said. I'm not ready to fight a war on my own. You won't be alone, Jake, Lyra said with a reassuring smile. We'll face this together. And in that moment, Jake knew that his life had changed forever. He wasn't just a mechanic anymore. He was part of something much bigger, a journey that would take him to places he had never imagined, to dangers he could never have predicted. But one thing was certain, he wouldn't face it alone. The next morning, Jake woke up to the sound of the ship's hum. It was soft but persistent, like a heartbeat, almost as if the ship was alive and waiting for him to return. He rubbed his eyes and sat up, still trying to shake off the overwhelming feelings from the night before. Lyra had been kind, patient, and understanding, but the weight of what she asked him to do, still hung heavily on his mind. Help her fight a war? Jake had never been involved in anything like that. He was a mechanic, a man of simple skills, and now it seemed like the universe had decided that wasn't enough. He was being asked to be part of something much bigger than himself. The thought scared him. He stood up and stretched, looking around the small workshop. The ship was sitting in the corner, its metal surface gleaming faintly in the morning light. It was ready, but was he? Jake walked over to the ship, his hand lightly grazing the cool surface. As soon as his fingers touched the ship's outer layer, he felt something. It was like a soft pulse, almost as if the ship was responding to him, acknowledging his presence. He had no idea how it worked, but it felt like Lyra had been right. The ship was more than just metal and technology. It had its own energy, and somehow it was linked to him. His mind went back to the conversation they had the night before. Lyra had explained that the war she was involved in was much larger than anything humans had experienced. It was a conflict between different alien species, each fighting for control of the galaxy. She had told him that humans had the potential to change the outcome, but only if they could be united, strong, and willing to fight alongside her people. The weight of her words still echoed in his mind. What if he wasn't strong enough? If he made a mistake and caused more harm than good? As Jake stood there, lost in thought, Lyra's voice broke through his worries. Are you ready? Jake turned to find her standing in the doorway of the workshop, her violet eyes watching him closely. She didn't look like someone who had just crashed a ship into a field. She looked calm, confident, and ready for whatever was coming. Don't know if I am, Jake admitted, his voice tinged with uncertainty. This is a lot to take in. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do. Lyra stepped closer, her gaze softening. You already started, Jake. You're more ready than you think. You have something special inside you. The ship feels it. I feel it. Jake looked at the ship, still unsure. What if I fail? Lyra's smile was gentle but firm. Failure is part of learning. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to try. Jake swallowed hard. He had never been the type of person to jump into something without thinking it through, but there was no going back now. Lyra needed him. Earth needed him. Couldn't turn his back on them, no matter how much he feared the unknown. All right, Jake said, finally making up his mind. I'll do it. I'll help you. Lyra's eyes lit up with relief. Thank you, Jake. You don't know what this means. Jake nodded, though his heart was still racing. I don't know what's coming, but I'm in this. Just tell me what to do next. Lyra smiled, stepping forward and placing a hand on his shoulder. We'll start with the basics. You need to learn how to use the ship. It won't be easy, but I'll guide you. Jake followed her outside, where the ship stood waiting in the open field. It looked even more impressive in the daylight, its sleek shape gleaming in the sun. Jake couldn't help but feel a sense of awe as he looked at it. This wasn't just a ship. It was a symbol of everything that was to come. Lyra led him to a small hatch on the side of the ship. Come, she said. Let me show you how it works. Jake hesitated for a moment before following her inside. The interior was nothing like he had expected. It was spacious, but the walls were lined with strange, glowing panels, each one covered in symbols that he didn't recognize. The air inside was cool, with a slight hum as if the ship itself was alive. Breathing, Lyra guided him to a central control panel. It was unlike any cockpit Jake had ever seen. There were no buttons or switches. Instead, there were smooth, touch-sensitive surfaces, and the symbols on the panels seemed to respond to Lyra's touch. She placed her hand on one of the surfaces, and the ship responded immediately, its systems coming to life. This is the core of the ship, Lyra explained. It connects directly to the pilot. You will learn to control it through your thoughts and your instincts. The ship adapts to you, Jake. Jake stared at the panel, feeling both amazed and overwhelmed. I don't know if I can do that. I don't have any experience with this kind of technology. Lyra smiled at him, a hint of amusement in her expression. You don't need experience. Just trust yourself. The ship will teach you. Taking a deep breath, Jake placed his hand on the control panel, just as Lyra had done. The moment his fingers made contact, he felt something shift. It was like a connection was made, a link between him and the ship. He could feel its system sits. Engines, its weapons, its power waiting for him to command them. For a moment, Jake froze. The weight of it all hit him. This wasn't just about fixing a ship. This was about becoming part of something much larger, something dangerous. He also knew that he couldn't back down now. He had made his choice. Slowly he focused, pushing aside the fear that was threatening to overwhelm him. He reached out with his mind, trying to understand the ship's systems. At first, nothing happened. But then, he felt a pulse of energy, as if the ship was responding to his will. It was small at first, just a flicker, but it grew stronger as Jake focused harder. Lyra stood by, watching him carefully. "You're doing it, Jake. Trust yourself. The ship is with you." Jake took another deep breath and pushed himself further. Slowly, he began to feel more confident, more in control. The ship's systems responded to his thoughts, guiding him through the process. It was like nothing he had ever experienced, a feeling of complete connection with the ship, as if it were an extension of himself. After a few moments, Jake opened his eyes, amazed at what had just happened. The ship was humming steadily, its systems functioning perfectly. He had done it. He had connected with the ship. Lyra smiled, her eyes proud. "You see? You are ready, Jake." Jake couldn't help but smile back, a sense of accomplishment swelling in his chest. For the first time, he felt like he was part of something bigger than himself. He wasn't just a mechanic anymore. He was a part of the fight, a part of the galaxy's future. "This is just the beginning," Lyra said, her voice soft but full of purpose. "Now, we prepare for what's to come." Jake nodded, his heart still racing. But now it wasn't fear that he felt, it was determination. He was ready for whatever lay ahead. Jake stood beside Lyra, staring out at the vast landscape that stretched out before them. The sun had risen, casting golden light across the fields, but the beauty of the scene didn't ease the weight in his chest. The ship was ready. It connected with it, but now everything felt different. The ship, the technology, and what Lyra had told him, it was all too much. Lyra was beside him, her gaze steady, focused. She had that same quiet confidence, the kind that made it seem like she already knew what would happen next. Jake envied that confidence. He had never been the kind of person who could just leap into something without second-guessing himself. But now, there was no turning back. "Are you ready?" Lyra asked, her voice calm and reassuring. Jake didn't answer immediately. He'd been avoiding this question all morning, pretending that everything was normal. But it wasn't. This wasn't normal. He had just connected with an alien ship. And now Lyra was asking him to fight a war he didn't fully understand. "I'm not sure," Jake finally admitted. "I don't know what I'm doing." Lyra turned to him, her eyes filled with understanding. "You don't have to know everything right now. No one does. You're learning as you go, and that's enough. You don't need to be perfect, Jake. You just need to trust yourself." Jake exhaled slowly, trying to push the doubts away. He knew she was right. He didn't have all the answers, but no one did. And if he was going to help her, he had to believe in himself, just like she believed in him. He took a deep breath, standing a little taller. "Right, let's do this." Lyra gave him a small smile, then turned toward the ship. "Good. There's a lot to learn, but we'll start with the basics. Today, I'm going to show you how to use the ship's weapons systems. You're going to need them." Jake nodded. His heart skipped a beat. Weapons? He wasn't a fighter. He had fixed things, repaired engines, built tools. But fighting? He had never imagined he'd be using weapons, let alone leading a charge into battle. "I don't know if I'm ready for that," Jake said, his voice low. "What if I mess it up?" Lyra's expression softened, and she stepped closer to him. "The ship's weapons respond to you, just like the rest of the systems. You won't be alone, Jake. I'll be with you every step of the way." Jake met her gaze, her words sinking in. This wasn't just about him. It was about them, about the two of them working together. He wasn't fighting alone. Lyra had been through this before, and now it was his turn to step up. He wasn't just a mechanic anymore. He was a part of something bigger than himself. "All right," Jake said again, more firmly this time. "Let's go." Together they walked toward the ship. As they stepped inside, the familiar hum of the ship's systems surrounded them. The control panels lit up as Lyra led Jake to the weapons console. It looked complicated, far more advanced than anything Jake had ever seen. But he didn't feel the usual panic that would have gripped him when faced with something unknown. Instead, he felt calm. The connection he had made with the ship the day before was still there, like an invisible thread linking him to it. "This is the weapons interface," Lyra said, pointing to a series of touch-sensitive panels. "The ship's weapons are controlled through your thoughts, just like the other systems, but you need to focus. You have to connect with the ship's defense systems before you can use them." Jake placed his hand on the panel, just like Lyra had done before. The moment his fingers touched the surface, he felt a wave of energy flow through him. It was like the ship was alive, like it was speaking directly to him, guiding him. He focused, just like Lyra had taught him. The ship's systems responded to his thoughts, and the weapons systems lit up, ready for activation. "There's a target range nearby," Lyra said, her voice calm and steady. "We'll go there first, and I'll show you how to aim and fire. Don't worry, I'll be right beside you." Jake nodded, trying to keep his nerves in check. He had always been good with machines, but this was different. This wasn't about fixing something. It was about using the ship to fight. The thought sent a shiver down his spine.
Nowadays.
But he couldn't back out now. He had made a promise. The two of them walked to the ship's cockpit, and Lyra began inputting commands to launch the ship. The engines roared to life, and the ship lifted. Off the ground, soaring into the sky, Jake felt a strange mix of exhilaration and fear as they climbed higher and higher. The landscape below them grew smaller, the fields and forests now just a patchwork of green and brown. "Are you ready?" Lyra asked, her voice cutting through his thoughts. Jake glanced at her, seeing the determination in her eyes. It was clear that she believed in him. She had put her trust in him, and he couldn't let her down. "I'm ready," Jake said, his voice steady. The ship leveled out, and Lyra guided it toward the target range. It was a small facility, tucked away in a remote part of the planet. It wasn't far, but it felt like miles. The entire journey was surreal to Jake. Just days ago, he had been working on routine repairs. Now he was flying an alien ship preparing to use its weapons. His whole life had turned upside down in a matter of days. The target range was set up with various drones, each one designed to simulate enemy targets. Lyra activated the first one, and Jake's eyes locked onto it. Laz's drone moved quickly, darting through the air like a small, fast-moving ship. Jake could feel the connection between himself and the ship, the weapons system responding to his focus. "Lock onto the target," Lyra instructed. Jake focused his thoughts on the drone, willing the ship's targeting system to lock on. The ship hummed, and a red light blinked on the control panel. It was locked. He could feel it. He reached out with his mind, guiding the ship's weapons, and in a split second, the drone exploded in a burst of light. Jake blinked, surprised by how natural it felt. The weapons systems responded instantly to his thoughts, guiding him with a precision he hadn't expected. The feeling was almost like second nature, like it was meant to be. The ship was alive, and it was guiding him. "You did it," Lyra exclaimed, her voice filled with pride. Jake smiled, a rush of confidence flooding through him. He had done it. He had used the ship's weapons. "This is just the beginning," Lyra said, her voice serious now. "The real test is ahead. But you're ready, Jake. I can feel it." Jake nodded, his heart still pounding in his chest. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to back down.
What?
The journey ahead would be dangerous, but he wasn't alone. He had Lyra, and together they would face whatever came their way. Jake couldn't believe what he was about to do. The sky ahead was darkening, the stars beginning to twinkle in the vastness above. Lyra sat beside him in the cockpit of the ship, her calm presence a steadying force. The ship's engines hummed, softly responding to the light touch of Jake's hand on the controls. He had flown the ship several times now, but tonight felt different. Tonight they weren't just going for a test flight. They were headed into real danger. "Are you sure we should be doing this?" Jake asked, his voice tight with uncertainty. "I mean, we're really doing this, right?" Lyra's eyes were focused on the view ahead, her expression unreadable, but Jake could sense the same nerves in her that he felt. She had seen countless battles, countless dangers in her lifetime, but he could tell this was something even she was not taking lightly. "This is our best chance," Lyra replied, her voice steady, yet filled with determination. "The enemy is close, and we can't afford to wait any longer. The galaxy needs us." "You're ready, Jake. I believe in you." Jake nodded, even though a part of him still wasn't sure he was ready for what lay ahead. He'd always been someone who preferred to stay out of conflict, to fix things, to make life easier for others. But now, here he was, piloting an alien warship, preparing to face an enemy that threatened the safety of entire worlds. He swallowed hard, forcing his mind to focus. This wasn't just about him anymore. This was about everyone. It's about Earth, about Lyra's people. He couldn't let fear control him, not now, not when everything was at stake. The ship glided smoothly through the atmosphere, the landscape below growing more distant with every passing second. Jake felt a sense of awe as he looked out at the stars ahead. The universe stretched out before him, vast and endless, and he was a part of it now. He wasn't just a mechanic from a quiet colony anymore. He was something more. As they flew farther into space, Lyra activated the ship's communication system. Her voice filled the cockpit, calm but authoritative. "This is Lyra of the Xantheon fleet. We are en route to the enemy's location. Prepare for engagement." Jake's hands tightened around the controls as the reality of their situation set in. Lyra had made it clear that this wasn't just a simple rescue mission. The enemy they were facing wasn't some small group of raiders. They were an entire faction bent on taking over the galaxy. If they succeeded, countless innocent lives would be lost. "Stay focused," Lyra said, her voice softening just a little as she turned to Jake. "I'll guide you. Just trust the ship and trust yourself." Jake nodded again, his eyes fixed. On the stars ahead, could feel the ship's pulse beneath his fingers, almost like it was alive, just like Lyra had said. It was strange, but comforting at the same time. The ship wasn't just an advanced piece of technology. It was part of him now. He was part of it. Hours passed and the stars grew brighter as they neared their destination. Finally, Lyra spoke. "Again, we've reached the perimeter. The enemy fleet is ahead." Jake's heart raced as they approached. The vastness of space made the enemy fleet look even more intimidating. There were ships of all sizes lined up in tight formation, their weapons ready for battle. Jake's hands clenched around the controls, but he took a deep breath, forcing himself to stay calm. This was it. There was no turning back now. Lyra's voice broke through the silence again. "I'm going to engage their defenses first. Stay with me and keep the ship steady." Jake glanced at Lyra, and for the first time since they had left Earth, he saw a flicker of worry in her eyes. It was gone as quickly as it had come, replaced by her usual determination. She wasn't afraid of the battle, but Jake could see the weight of the situation on her shoulders. He focused on the controls, feeling the ship respond to his touch. The targeting system lit up, the crosshairs locking onto the enemy fleet. Lyra had already begun her attack, the ship's weapons firing in quick succession. The enemy ships exploded into bursts of light, their shields useless against the power of the Xantheon ship. "Good, Jake," Lyra said, her voice filled with praise. "Keep it steady. We're not done yet." Jake's focus tightened as the enemy returned fire. The ship rocked slightly as shots hit the shields, but Jake didn't flinch. He kept his hands steady on the controls, guiding the ship through the barrage. His mind was clear, focused. It wasn't as hard as he had imagined. The ship responded to his instincts, and with each shot he fired, he felt more in control. The weapons were no longer just tools. They were part of him, part of the connection between him and the ship, as they moved closer to the heart of the enemy fleet. Jake could see the bigger ship's massive behemoths, their weapons aimed directly at them. The battle was intensifying, but Jake didn't hesitate. Took the ship into a sharp dive, avoiding enemy fire, then pulled up just in time to launch a counterattack. His heart pounded in his chest as the ship's cannons fired, destroying one of the enemy ships in a flash of light. Lyra's voice cut through the chaos. "That's it, Jake. You've got it." Jake could hardly believe it. He had done it. Had helped destroy an enemy ship. The power of it was almost overwhelming, but he couldn't get distracted. He couldn't stop now. More enemy ships appeared on the radar, and the battle raged on. The ship's weapons systems were responding to Jake's every move, and Lyra's guidance kept him on track. The two of them were working together seamlessly, as if they had been partners for years instead of just days. Despite the chaos, Jake couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. He had never imagined he would be fighting in space using alien technology to save lives. But now, as the battle continued, he knew that he was making a difference. The fight wasn't easy, and it wasn't over, but for the first time in his life, Jake felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The enemy fleet began to retreat, their ships turning and fleeing as the Xantheon fleet pressed forward. The battle was won, but Jake knew it wasn't the end. There would be more battles, more enemies to face. But for now they had one, and Jake, once just a mechanic from a quiet colony, had played a part in it. Lyra turned to him, her eyes filled with gratitude and pride. "We did it, Jake. You did it." Jake smiled, his heart still racing. "I couldn't have done it without you." Lyra nodded, her expression serious once more. "There will be more to come. But for today, we've taken a step toward victory." Jake looked out at the stars again, his thoughts swirling. He wasn't sure what the future held, but he knew one thing for certain. He was no longer just a mechanic. He was part of something much bigger, a journey that would take him through battles, challenges, and discoveries. And he was ready.